Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Aida Sanchez Vela, Spanish interpreter with Interpreters United WUPSI Local 1671 in support of SSB 5304. DSHS decided to save money by destroying a very successful testing and certification program for spoken language interpreters. A spectacular program that has right now, the result is that Washington State right now has more interpreters credentialed than California. So they decided to outsource such testing, which in principle, we could be open to that, but to that concept, but their chosen method is the equivalent of issuing a driver's license to people who pass the written test without ever taking a driving test, which is very dangerous. On top of that, DSHS created a conflict of interest by choosing the same vendor that coordinates interpreting services. This language company, which has no history of ever testing interpreters, suddenly was allowed to test the providers of the services it sells. This makes it impossible for them to meet the national standards for the accreditation of certification programs that ensure stakeholder representation and autonomy in decision-making. This bill will first clean up the mess, and second, it will create a work group that will engage in a thoughtful process of designing an adequate testing system. Please pass this bill, and I am happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Dennis Eagle with the Washington Federation of State Employees here today in support of Senate Bill 5304. The purpose of this bill is to ensure that residents with limited English proficiency have access to high-quality spoken language interpretation in medical and social service settings. There are decades of evidence demonstrating that providing LEP patients with quality interpretation in medical settings improves health outcomes for the patient. Medical interpretation is a lot more complex than mere translation, and it's critical that only those interpreters who demonstrate this higher level of skill be certified by the state to protect LEP patients. This bill does three things. It ensures that interpreter candidates pass written and oral tests to make sure that they can do the work effectively, prohibits private entities with a financial interest in the provision of interpreting services from doing that testing and certification, and it establishes a work group the staff described quite well. A couple of other things about that work group that may be of interest to you. They're to also make recommendations about how to get more interpreters in rural communities where they struggle to meet that need, as well as more interpreters in languages of lesser demand, which is another area where more work needs to be done. And the last thing I would just mention, Madam Chair, in answer to your question, interpreters certified by DSHS are used by, the biggest setting is Medicaid. Healthcare Authority is the largest single group that uses these interpreters, but so does LNI, so does DCYF, so does DSHS, and all of these agencies rely on the DSHS certification to determine that those interpreters are qualified to do the work.